Broadcasting live from Israel. IsraelSportsRadio.com.
When the bases are loaded, smart investors don't step back. Find out what they're doing from international money expert Doug Goldstein on the Goldstein on Gelt Show, Mondays at 7 p.m.
We're standing outside El Gaucho restaurant here in downtown Jerusalem, and we see another happy, satisfied customer. Ma'am, what is your name?
Kashet?
And what did you think of El Gaucho restaurant?
Ah, incredible. I'm not much of a meat eater, but when I do eat meat, I go out to El Gaucho. My husband brought me here for an anniversary dinner, and I wasn't crazy about going to a meat place for an anniversary dinner, but the meat was so tender that I had to come back a second time, so here I am for the second time.
Well, you heard it right from the cow's mouth. El Gaucho in downtown Jerusalem.
This is Tamar Cass, and you're listening to Israel Sports Radio.
DJ Venom, DJ Venom, DJ Venom, DJing parties throughout Israel, birthday parties, weddings, club events, bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, and much more. You pick the type of music, and DJ Venom will turn your event into the party of the year. Available Sunday through Thursday. Call 052-952-6506 or email djvenom1984@yahoo.com. That's 052-952-6506 or email djvenom1984@yahoo.com. Book your party today. That's DJ Venom.
This is Dimitri Salita, and you're listening to IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Broadcasting live from Jerusalem. IsraelSportsRadio.com.
And we're here live on Louis Live and IsraelSportsRadio.com. It's a Burt Sugar boxing special. And we're going to get to a lot of boxing news. We have two great guests tonight. Joe Robbins, our American correspondent, and the director of Split Decision, the story of Rigondo, Guillermo, Bryn Jonathan Butler. We're going to get started right now with our American correspondent to talk a lot of boxing news. Joe Robbins. Joe, can you hear us?
Hey, yeah, Ari, how's it going?
It's going great. It's been too long since you've been on the show, so we appreciate the time, of course. Before we get into boxing, let's talk about tonight's national championship game, Kentucky versus Kansas. And coaching-wise, it's a rematch of Calipari against, of course, Bill Self, who coached against each other in 2008, and that's when Calipari's team blew that big lead by missing all those free throws. What is your prediction tonight? What do you think will happen?
So first of all, just in terms of the coaching matchup, I think tonight, if it's a close game situation, Kentucky will foul intentionally before they'll give up that three that beat them when Mario Chalmers took it home for Kansas against Memphis. But luckily for Kentucky fans, I don't think it's going to be an issue. Kansas has overperformed all year. It's pretty incredible how well they've done, and definitely a testament to Bill Self as a coach and to the team leaders as players, Tyshawn Taylor, Thomas Robinson, the way they've come together and been able to rise up a team that wasn't picked to be a normal Kansas team in terms of its elite status and brought it to the Final Four. Having said that, Kentucky, top to bottom, the most talented team in the country, as they have been a few times over the past few years in the Calipari era. But I think the difference this year is they're actually a team. The John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins team, Patrick Patterson, that set the record for most first-round picks in the NBA draft and all those different records, they didn't have the chemistry that this team has. And I think they are a true team. They, no question, win the talent and skill battle with Kansas, and especially after not playing up to their potential against Louisville, I think they're going to be ready. They're going to come in, and I definitely think that if Coach Cal is going to get one, it'll be this year. And again, it's not because of anything that Kansas is lacking as much as it is everything that Kentucky has and what they're capable of. And I think all of their stars will shine tonight and play like stars. Big bounce back game from Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, who was limited by foul trouble against Louisville.
So basically, the Kentucky teams in the past, especially the John Wall team, might have been more talented, but this one, in your opinion, plays better as a team.
Yeah, exactly. I think top to bottom, this is a more talented team. So even though John Wall was better than maybe any player on this team, and again, that's not a knock on this team. It shows John Wall's greatness as a college point guard that year he was in it. I think this team runs so smoothly and really is a well-oiled machine. When you look at teams that have the ability to be great and take it to the next level, and, you know, sometimes records are misleading, different things, but the fact that Kentucky has the greatest record right now in school history and broke a record going back to 1949 with all of the amazing teams they've had, all of the amazing coaches, Adolph Rupp, obviously Rick Pitino, all the different championships and that legacy. I don't think it's a fluke that this team was the one to break it. And so I think, you know, when the NBA draft comes around, and that's one of my favorite times of the year and favorite things to analyze, the top 6 players on this team will be drafted, 5 of them in the first round, with Darius Miller, the one senior on the team, going second round, and he might even sneak into the first round. So I think the fact that you've got all that natural talent and skill coming together and playing as a team. And the other big thing that the John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins team didn't have was they didn't have the poise of upperclassmen. And even though this team is all freshmen, also all of these great players, Terrence Jones obviously is older, and so is Darius Miller, but the majority of that talent, Anthony Davis, Marcus Teague, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, they are all playing like upperclassmen. They're all playing like they've been there before. They're not cracking under pressure. One guy goes down with foul trouble like Kidd-Gilchrist does. 2 other guys step up. And so I think that, you know, it'll just be too much for a Kansas team that will definitely come in inspired and expertly coached, but really stumbled into the title game. I think Ohio State lost that game more than Kansas won it, whereas Kentucky, even though they were shaky, they definitely showed how much more dominant they were than that Louisville squad.
Okay, Joe, so you like Kentucky tonight? Give us a score.
Let's go 74-59.
Wow.
Kentucky.
Oh, whoa. Pretty good blowout there, 15 points. All right, we have you on record for that, so we'll make fun of you later if you're off. But if you're right, then you get the credit. Okay, let's go to our favorite sport, boxing. Let's start with what we think is an April Fool's joke. On Lennox Lewis's website, it was posted yesterday that he was going to come out of retirement, out of his 9-year retirement, to fight Klitschko for the heavyweight title. But if you notice, it said that he was going to get about $120 million. So I tend to think it's a hoax. Give us your thoughts about that whole potential scam.
Yeah, so it's interesting. You know, Lennox Lewis is known for being quirky. He's known for having a sense of humor. When he's not in the ring or a pre-fight presser, he's known for being a nice guy. And so my initial thought was, all right, April Fool's, you know, it's his quirky sense of humor and the money aspect, like you mentioned. But in the past couple of weeks, he's been in the media more than once calling out the Klitschkos, calling out what a disgrace the heavyweight division is, partially because they won't fight each other, but also because there's no contender. And so I think it probably was an April Fool's joke, but if it was definitely one of the more elaborate ones from an athlete that we've seen in a while, just because by all accounts, Louis is in the shape to come back. Whether or not he's in boxing shape and ready to take punches in the ring, he's in physical, athletic shape. He also has been calling out the heavyweight division, like I said. He's been very unhappy with David Hay. Klitschko, Vitaly Klitschko has wanted a rematch of their 2003 fight when Lennox Lewis beat him since that next day. So it's all these factors in here. And then on top of it, Lewis tweeted it, but like you said, he also put it on his website as an official news story. So pretty elaborate to go all that way, and he named the date and said it was a done deal. So no word from the Klitschko camp and no word from the Lewis camp since it happened yesterday, whether or not it's true. As a boxing fan, I definitely hope it's the truth. I think everything he said about the heavyweight division is true, and we've spoken about that, about how there are no real challengers to the Klitschkos, and since they won't fight each other, there won't be an undisputed champion. But I think it was probably, unfortunately, just an April Fool's Day prank, but I'm definitely hoping it wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, that fight in 2003 was a great heavyweight title fight. We really haven't seen one like that probably since. That went back and forth. Klitschko was ahead on all three judges' cards 4-2, but he had that cut on his eye. Klitschko claimed it was a thumb rub from Lewis's glove, but it looked to be a punch. But that was a sensational fight. And, you know, Lennox Lewis at this point is, my math is right, 46, I think. But you know, it would still be the most exciting thing going around. And when I first heard it, and I didn't think right away it was a practical joke, I got very, very excited. So you made some great points that it was pretty elaborate. He set a date, he put it on his Twitter, and now we got to wait. But he wouldn't get $112 or $120 million. How much money would he get if he came out of retirement?
Yeah, so I was trying to calculate that. You know, he'd be coming out of retirement. The Klitschkos are a huge draw, especially if you do it somewhere in Europe. They're a huge draw in Germany, in their home area, the whole former USSR region, wherever they want to fight there. And then if you do it in London, Lennox Lewis. So anywhere in Europe, it would be a huge draw. And pay-per-view, I think it would be a huge draw because it would be the first real heavyweight fight that anyone would care about in so long. So it definitely, I agree, it definitely wouldn't get to those proportions of the richest fight in history, but maybe with everything generated from both sides and all of that, it could reach close to $100 million. And I think, if he comes out for this fight and it really were to happen and they do it in one of those huge stadiums at O2 in London or wherever he usually fights in around Germany, one of the few places wherever Klitschko usually does, I think it could be maybe one of those $20 to $30 million pay range for Lewis after all is said and done. I think Klitschko would probably get a little bit more of it just because he's Klitschko and he's the title holder, not the contender and all of that. But I think it could definitely get up to those proportions where between ticket sales, they're not doing it at the MGM where you sell 5,000 tickets, or at least I don't think that they would. I think they would do it in Europe at a place where you sell 20,000 or 25,000 or a lot more. And then the pay-per-view would be its normal, $56, $59, whatever the ridiculous price is. But because it's such a good fight, people would pay it. If it was somewhere in America, I would definitely go and cover that fight. And if it's overseas, that's one of the few that I would pay for. So I think, no question, financially, it would be a huge windfall for both fighters. But I think if Louis does come back to do it, as much as he said, I have 125 million reasons to do it, I think the one reason is because the main reason, the money would be like 1A, but I think the main reason would be sort of resuscitating the heavyweight division. Although, if he were to win, that would probably kill the division if he didn't go on to fight Vladimir, because the Klitschkos are the only guys, and if you come out at 46 and beat the only guy, that might be even worse for boxing. But for now, it's definitely a good thing for the heavyweight division, just the speculation around it alone.
All right, I want to go on to other things, but let's talk about this one more question about Lennox Lewis. If he were to come back and beat Klitschko, he'd be the oldest heavyweight champion in history because George Foreman did it at 45. Lennox would do it at 46. Where would that rank him all time? Because as it is, he's an all-time great heavyweight. People have different arguments if he's top 5, top 10. But if he did this after a 9-year layoff, where would that rank him all time among the greatest heavyweight champions?
Yeah, I think that would definitely push him into top 5. I mean, you talked about how he's already right there, and people, although this is a different time and it's not a great time for the heavyweight division, the Klitschko brothers are the real deal. And so definitely beating one of them, especially when they're still in their prime, and doing their thing on a regular basis, so I think people initially might say, okay, he's coming out of retirement, that's impressive, but he's coming out during the worst period for heavyweight boxing in X amount of years. But I think when it comes down to it, the way that boxing historians and the media and different people will look at it, people involved in the sport will look at it, will be, he came out after 9 years, he's the oldest ever, and he came out and beat a true, tried and tested champion. So I think it definitely, he's already the last undisputed heavyweight champion. If he does this, I think it pushes him to one of the greats of all time. And it would be, forget the fallout afterwards and what it does to the division. If Lennox Lewis comes back at 46, almost 47 years old, then beats Klitschko, that's a great day for boxing, and that's what boxing needs, especially with the mega fight that boxing really needs not looking like it's going to happen.
All right, and again, back to the 2003 fight, they were going to have a rematch. Lewis then ducked that, or he said he didn't need the fight, but a lot of people thought he was scared to fight Klitschko again because of the damage Klitschko did to Lewis, so it'd be very, very great to see a rematch. All right, let's go on to the lower divisions. Manny Pacquiao is in the news. Now, I'm told that there's some tax officials. He apparently may have avoided the IRS. We do know he has a gambling addiction. Kind of he does that on the side in addition to being a boxer, in addition to being a politician. Tell us about the tax problems for Manny Pacquiao.
Yes, so it's interesting. Whenever it seems, whenever there's a figure like Manny Pacquiao who is so revered in his country, who is a politician, who is like a god in the Philippines, it seems like something comes and tries to bring them down within their own country.
Right.
And so these are coming from the government of the Philippines, and basically Pacquiao has come out and said they're baseless charges, and he is being targeted and harassed by people in the government because of politics, by his political opponents. He's a senator in the Philippines, and as much as he's a god over there, he also has enemies in the government. And so it's the Philippines' main revenue agency, their version of the IRS, like you said. And basically, they want to try and take him down. So the interesting thing is, who knows? Maybe, obviously we'll say he's innocent until proven guilty, but maybe there is some truth to the charges. But definitely the first thing that popped out to me when this happened was it seemed like another case that we've seen in sports so many different times, in so many different sports where the home government, someone isn't happy that he's so powerful, and maybe between his singing career, his boxing, now in the government, he's gotten too big for his britches.
And it is. You make a great point that whenever someone gets big, someone tries to bring him down. But the thing I go back to is Barry Bonds had issues with the IRS because he took money on the side for autographs. Is Manny taking any money on the side in addition to his boxing purses?
So not that we know of. When he does the shows with his band after his fights in Las Vegas, all those different things appear to be, the shows are for free by all accounts, and everything else appears to be on the up and up. He's known for being an upstanding citizen, a great guy, and as far as any indication we have goes, he's the same in his business dealings. Now, they are all taking place in the U.S., and maybe that's where some of the confusion stems from. Also, there was, according to the figures, there was a drastic drop in the taxes he paid from one year to the next, during the period they're investigating, and we know that his income has definitely not had a drastic drop. But it looks like everything is on the up and up in terms of his business dealings, so then it's just a question of whether he's actually transferring them. But it'll be interesting to see as more details come out now that he's vowed to fight this in court in the Philippines and said that he's been being slandered and going to fight these charges and prove that they aren't true. It'll be interesting to see what comes up and what comes out about all the income in America, because all of his fights are here, his promotions are all here, his endorsements, the money goes here. So even though he lives in the Philippines, it's believed that many of his assets are in America. And so then the question becomes, does he have to pay Filipino taxes on that income, and is that taxable income, and all of those things about residency and different things. So that'll be interesting to see. The other interesting thing is whether or not there are any special tax laws because he's a member of the government. So, for example, in Israel, in some different situations, and there have been a lot of problems with government members and corruption, obviously, unfortunately, with bribes and different things, but there are different tax statuses for politicians, and a lot of different things that goes into that legally in Israel. So I'm interested to find out if that's how it is in the Philippines also, and if so, how that will come into play. And then the final thing, Wesley Snipes is in jail for tax evasion here in America. If Manny is guilty, does he just have to pay a huge fine, millions of dollars, whatever it is, or could he potentially be facing jail time? And so far I haven't heard anything about jail time. It really looks like this just the beginning of this, even though it's been going on for a couple years. It's just coming out now, and he's about to fight 2 days ago, and all of these things. Is he facing any criminal liability in addition to damages and back taxes owed?
All right, we're speaking with our American correspondent, Joe Robbins. A few minutes with Joe before we go on to Brent Jonathan Butler. Let's go real quickly to Kelly Pavlik. His career really has not been the same since he lost to Bernard Hopkins a few years ago. It wasn't for the title, but Bernard Hopkins was 20 years or so approximately older than Kelly. I think Kelly's 26 at the time of that fight. What is the latest with Kelly Pavlik, the former middleweight champion?
Yeah, so Kelly Pavlik had pretty grandiose, if you want to put it that way, fall from grace. He was the darling. He came out of nowhere to take the title, and then he started drinking. He had problems with alcohol, and during his comeback, in addition to fighting the alcoholism, he had a lot of problems with the media. He was saying things he shouldn't have said, and then he had a fight scheduled, a comeback fight, and he canceled it. And when he canceled it, the reason he gave was he wasn't being paid enough, which is never the reason that sports fans want to hear. And also, it cost Showtime all their money because they had already sent people out there for it. It cost the promoters their money. They had to refund all the tickets. So Pavlik had a pretty big fall from grace, and he's been working with his manager, Duncan, who is respected as one of the top managers in boxing and in boxing history, really, at finding talent and getting the most out of it, in addition to being great on the business side. And so Pavlik was 37-2 and ready for a comeback, and he faced Jocko, an up-and-coming fighter, Aaron Jedi Jocko, on Saturday night in San Antonio, and he stopped him in the second round. And Jocko said after the fight, he said, he's a great guy. He said, I've never been hit that hard in my life. And before the fight, Pavlik's manager, Duncan, had said, I don't just want him to come out and win this fight. I hope he fights the way he's been fighting in the ring, because he's been kicking the expletive out of people during the pre-fight training. And then he obviously came in and he got Jacko with a left hook, which should set up a title fight rematch with Amir Khan, if Amir Khan can take care of business in his next fight. Khan, up-and-coming fighter, one of the top fighters in the world, had sort of an inexplicable, inexcusable loss, but now he's won his last two fights, repositioned himself. So we're looking at potentially a great fight, but regardless of what happens, great comeback story for Pavlik. He's clean now. He's saying the right things. He has all the bad influences out of his life, and he definitely looked as good Saturday night as he's looked in probably 3 or 4 years.
All right, one last question. That's a great story, by the way. One last question before we let you go. Give us your thoughts on Bert Sugar. He passed away about a week ago, and definitely added a lot to boxing. His story, he's famous for the cigar. Everyone likes him, likable guy. Give us your thoughts about the great Bert Sugar.
Yeah, so I had the honor of meeting Mr. Sugar at Yankee Stadium at the Cotto Foreman fight a few years back. And there were, because it was Yankee Stadium, because it was New York, there was the who's who of celebrities from all walks of life. And definitely as a boxing fan and as a journalist, it was the coolest person who I saw there, and the greatest person to meet was definitely Burt Sugar. He redefined, and maybe we don't even need the prefix re, he defined what covering boxing meant. And in addition to being larger than life with his fedora and the cigar, like you mentioned, he authored dozens of books, almost 100 books. He led some of the best boxing magazines. He's in the Boxing Hall of Fame as a writer. He was a great guy, always had the best lines, always had the best coverage, and he really was this larger-than-life figure, and it's tough to do that as a journalist, but that was just a testament to how skilled he was as a historian, as a sports historian, as a fan of the sport, but also his personality. And even though he was larger than life, he was respected for it. So it's definitely a huge loss for the sport, but without a doubt, his legacy will live on, and people definitely will remember his contributions. And I think even the casual fan knows him because of how involved he was. He was in the Great White Hype, for example.
Right.
He had his whole media thing because of his persona. So yeah, it was an honor to meet him that night, and definitely my condolences to his family. It's a big loss for the boxing community, but he will definitely live on through all of the articles and books that he authored, and really the impact that he had from the game on the game, in addition to just the writing he did, but what he did to move it into the forefront. And he was writing during some of the greatest periods in boxing history, and definitely the greatest in modern boxing history.
Well, there you go. Joe, we'd love to talk to you more, but we got to go to our next guest. But thank you so much for being on Louis Live on Israel, sportsradio.com.
Thank you, Ari. Always a pleasure.
All right, we'll do it again real soon, Joe. Be well.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right, that was Joe Robbins. That was a lot of great stuff. We really could do an hour with Joe. I wish we had more time for Joe Robbins, but we do have to go to our next guest. He is the director of Split Decision. It is the story of Guillermo Rigondeaux. Now, everyone should check out the story. He was one of the greatest amateurs, not the greatest amateur boxer of all time, and won the gold medal, and is a champion in boxing at 123-pound division. And he'll be fighting the undercard. Yes, Bryn, is that you?
Yeah, it's me.
Hey, what's up, man? You're live on Louis Live at IsraelSportsRadio.com. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing great. It's excited to have you on. A lot to talk about. And let's start with Rigondeaux. He's going to be fighting on the undercard of a very big fight. Tell us about that, specifics, and the details to it.
Rio's going to be fighting on Pacquiao's undercard on June 9th against Keon Kennedy.
Okay, so he gets the Manny Pacquiao undercard, and he fought on Manny Pacquiao's undercard in Cowboy Stadium a while ago, correct?
Yeah, that's right, the end of 2010.
Okay, the end of 2010. So he'll have a big spotlight, I imagine, because a lot of people there are going to see Manny Pacquiao. They come early, they'll see Rigondeaux. What is Rigondeaux's shape mentally right now? How is he doing? What is the latest with him?
I think he's really pushing hard to try and get the big payday with the Filipino Flash, Nonito Donaire. So I think he's trying to push that issue by steamrolling Keon Kennedy in front of a big audience and try and show that he can get a big live gate. He's had trouble pulling audiences. His last fight, there was a live gate of $14,000 after he made, I think, a purse of around 54. So those kind of numbers are a problem in terms of luring a big champion. So that's what he's trying to do.
Okay, and what is the way he plans on going about doing that?
Well, I think by attacking all of the criticisms that he has against him, by fighting aggressively, by not looking bored in the ring.
Yeah, that'd be good.
But I mean, I think everybody acknowledges his skill level being superb, but I think what they criticize him for is he doesn't take risks, and kind of the same thing that's put against Floyd Mayweather, except that Rigondeaux can punch, so they want to see him show it. And his knockout percentage since he's turned professional is very high. They just want to see him sort of put his foot on the gas.
All right, let's go now to other boxing news. Of course, we're speaking with Jonathan Butler, the director of Split Decision. Now, I was told that Manny Pacquiao did an ad for Hennessy. Can you tell us if that is true or not? We know he's been having some issues with the IRS. Maybe this is his way of trying to pay them off?
Yeah, from what I've been told, there's been a lot of financial issues. If you've ever seen him fighting, he has just a massive entourage that he charters planes for. He has quite a fondness for gambling,
right.
Cockfighting. I think he had 6,000 fighting cocks back in the Philippines. So from what I'm in Los Angeles right now and met with Freddie Roach last week. Roach says that he's really changed every dynamic of sort of the way he's existing outside of the ring. So he's sold off all the fighting cocks, no more gambling, trying to sort out his financial affairs as well. So he's taking it seriously to kind of get back on track.
All right. Now, this many times has devastated and destroyed careers. Pete Rose not in the Hall of Fame because of this issue. Jordan had an issue of it in the early 90s. Is he going to some type of addiction counseling or a group or something? I mean, this really could damage him pretty good. What is he going to do to try to combat this?
Well, I think he's just trying to create a cohesive strategy with his team. I think everybody was aware after the last fight. I think it was the first time I've ever seen Pacquiao walk to the ring looking angry. Not even looking angry, but just not looking really, benevolent as a cow in India. He just has that glow about him walking out to the ring. And that last fight, something was off, and there were a lot of marital issues. So I just think it's hard the kind of pressurized atmosphere that this guy lives in. And he's a very generous, humble guy coming from where he came from, just from total destitute poverty to just insane wealth. He's hired people just to say no, call the open
right.
hands.
Right. You know what's bad when you have to pay someone to tell people that he's going to stop giving other people money.
Oh, you just can't say no. And, I mean, how much money is he keeping from these fights? As I say, the Dallas fight, he chartered a plane just to fly all the people out. Got rooms, gambling money, huge, huge money. I mean, millions just on these people over the course of a few days. So, if he's making $20 million and the IRS takes half of it, then 30% goes to Bob Arum, then 10% to Freddie Roach. That's not a lot of the piece of the big pie that's really left over for him.
And if he's giving the rest of it to his entourage, then he could end up with zero.
Exactly. I mean, it's not an accident. How many boxers really have come away from the sport who are fighting big paydays with any kind of money? I mean, there's Sugar Ray Leonard, Larry Holmes. It kind of goes down from there. There's not many.
Right. Of course, Joe Louis, as we know, ended up his life in Vegas greeting people because he was bankrupt and had also issues with the IRS. Let's move to the heavyweight championship world. Apparently, April Fool's joke. We're still trying to figure out if it's legitimate or not, but on Lennox Lewis's website, he said he's coming out of retirement to fight Klitschko. But kind of the giveaway, at least I think, of it being a prank is that he said he's getting $125 million. I doubt that seriously. What are your thoughts on the potential scam of Lennox Lewis coming out of retirement?
part of me wanted to see it happen because he just that some way he would be angry about the stain on his legacy of Vitaly was winning the fight when it was stopped on cuts. I mean, he's 46 years old at this point. He'd be 47 for that fight. Where does the 125 million come from? I don't see him possibly making more than 40. So that's the biggest indication. It's a fraud. But I still was scratching my head thinking, is there some way this could be true? But I just don't see where he could possibly get that money from.
Yeah, I think a lot of people want it to be true. In fact, I have a thought that he did intend this to be a prank, but maybe he'll see all the responses of positivity of him coming back in the ring people want to happen. Maybe he'll really consider it. He won't get, obviously, 125, but he could, like you said, get 40, has a chance to get that stain off because he was losing 4 rounds to 2. A lot of people thought the fight shouldn't have been stopped. And if he does win, he would be the oldest heavyweight champion in history at 47. Foreman holds the record at 45. Where would that put Lennox Lewis as far as the greatest heavyweight champions of all time?
Well, I that was the angle you mentioned was something that I thought could actually lure him out. I think Lennox Lewis is the most, other than maybe Larry Holmes, the most underrated heavyweight who ever fought. If you look at him, he lost twice. He avenged both of those, and with everybody else, he basically destroyed them, other than Vitaly Klitschko, and he wasn't in shape for that fight. He was far too heavy. I mean, he was aging at that point. I think he was 35 or 36. I don't see any heavyweight not having major problems with Lennox Lewis. Too big, too skilled, too powerful. The people said Tyson was way over the hill when they fought. He was, but I just don't see Tyson having anything but a world of trouble fighting him even early on in his career. Lewis was just a devastating champion. Not exciting. I mean, he's a chess player, so not exactly
right.
Easy to write about outside of the ring. There wasn't huge issues with infidelity or gambling or problems. He was a pretty stable guy who dedicated himself to the sport and dominated it. And then last time.
Yeah, he left up on top. He's one of the few heavyweights in history to beat every guy he's ever faced. And I think part of Lewis's legacy is the fact people avoided him. Riddick Bowe avoided him. Tyson in 95 paid a few million not to fight him. So that is part of the issue as well. Not a dazzling style, but got the job done. And very fights of his were really close. The Ray Mercer fight in the mid '90s was close. Frank Bruno was close until he threw an uppercut. But Lennox Lewis, as of now, is he top 10, top 5? Where is he right now, in your opinion?
Well, as I say, if you just match the people up, I can't see any heavyweight champion not having major problems with him. He's enormous, 6'5", 245, can punch, is tremendously skilled, and I mean, even most boxing fans, they watch the sport from the waist up. But if you watch Lewis's feet, technically he could move. I mean, he knew how to fight with his skill set and just dominate fights. I mean, he routed major prospects who came up who were undefeated, and he knocked them out in 1 round, 2 rounds. So I would put him in the top 5 easily. And I think the other metric of measuring a great heavyweight is their overall career. How steady were they? How dominant were they in their era? And very few have been anywhere close to as dominant as Lewis. He gave everybody trouble and for the most part, just wiped the floor with every opponent. So he's way, way up there, in my opinion.
Yeah, one of the things also, I know people not focus on so much, but there was a guy named Andrew Galata who was a top heavyweight in the late 90s. Yes, he was incompetent, hit Bowe low in 2 different fights, but was still pretty aggressive, pretty good. And Lennox Lewis knocked him out in 1 round and didn't give Andrew Galata a chance to hit him low because he was knocked down in the first round. So we'll see what happens if Lewis ends up coming back or not, if it was a practical joke or not. All right, let's go on to Kelly Pavlik. I was speaking to Joe Robbins about him. He's been in the news, and apparently he is sober and rolling, doing well. What are your thoughts about the former middleweight champion?
I just watched his fight last night. He looked great. I mean, his opponent didn't look like much, but I mean, he's got bricks in his hands, and if he's focused, then he obviously has some demons outside of the ring. My God, I just having had a amateur boxing career myself, the idea of training hungover or sweating out heavy nights of drinking, and I just can't imagine how those two can go together. But this guy was, I don't know how much he's got as far as demons, but I mean he looked pretty put together for his last fight, and he certainly got the potential. If you saw his fights against Jermaine Taylor, I mean this is an impressive fighter. But he just looks, there's something in the guy's face that worries me. Like the way Bernard Hopkins dominated him, it was more a domination of will. He won every round, I think, when they fought, or very close to that. So he's a big draw. There's not many decent white fighters out there. I'm sure that's the appeal in large part, but he looked great.
Yeah, that fight with Hopkins, was a surprise to everyone, and he got lucky that it wasn't for the title, but it seemed to really ruin him. And Hopkins has ruined a lot of fighters. A lot of guys end up on milk cartons after they go through Bernard Hopkins. So certainly not the first Kelly Pavlik is. All right, let's move to Bert Sugar. He passed away about a week ago, a week and a day, I believe. Give us your thoughts about Bert Sugar. Tell us if you ever had a chance to meet the legendary boxing commentator.
I had met him about 4 or 5 times, and I was supposed to meet with him for the film. I wouldn't say I procrastinated, but I didn't close the deal. I guess the last time I talked with him was about a month ago. I talked to him on the day he got the lung cancer diagnosis.
Oh, wow.
I had a weird take with Bert Sugar because, especially reading all of these, just the warm words that are said about him, he's a character. He was a walking tape loop of quotes. If you were writing anything, you could spend 5 minutes with him and get 10 quotes that would make anybody laugh, regardless if they cared anything about boxing. He was a very shrewd guy. He was on Madison Avenue living the madman life. He was living the real madman existence, as he would always tell everybody. But he was one of the cruelest people I think I've ever encountered. And I haven't heard anything mentioned about that, but I'll tell you a story. I was at the Dallas, this was back in Vegas. I think Roy Jones Jr. fought Bernard Hopkins in the second fight. Worst fight I've ever seen in my life. And after the fight, went to some kind of cigar room or something like that. And I don't smoke cigars, but I was just going there to meet with somebody or other. There's Bert Sugar holding court in front of about 10 people. Bert, when you meet him, he just could make you laugh. He was funny. He was a character. I always wondered, I've read a lot of these reports of him that he never lit his cigar and all that kind of stuff. Yes, he did light his cigar. I never saw him not smoking. So all these people who were sort of saying that it was just a prop, it was not a prop. He was smoking all the time. And so all of a sudden, as we're sitting there and he's telling jokes, and as I say, he had a 5-minute tape loop. If you stayed for the 6th minute, you heard the first minute of that loop. And so it was kind of strange to think, here's a 73, 74-year-old man walking around just continually, perpetually saying the same jokes over and over and over. It was just depressing. And while we're sitting there and he's telling some jokes and he's drinking whatever he was drinking, scotch or something, Amir Khan walked in. And as Amir Khan walked in, a young girl approached Amir Khan and said, Amir, I love you. I have something very special to give you. Amir Khan is one of the nicest people in boxing that I've ever encountered. He very politely said, I appreciate that so much. She began singing a song to him that was like an American Idol audition from hell. And as this was going on, it made it more touching about the fact that she sounded terrible. I don't remember exactly what the song was, but it could have been Celine Dion or something. Bert Sugar, after listening to this for 30 seconds and wasn't able to go on with telling some of his jokes, interrupted her and used the most abusive, abrasive language I have ever heard a human being address another human being in, just so he could get back to his drink and telling his story. The girl was just, not crestfallen, but just destroyed. And that's one of the images I take away from Bert Sugar, was just that if he wasn't on center stage, he could tear people down with more ruthlessness than any human being I've ever seen.
All right. Well, we appreciate the honesty. No, well, you know what? Sometimes when you have famous people like that, people only say good this, good that, but you are giving the full picture, and certainly not a perfect guy. That was not a good story. So hopefully he'll come back and apologize or something. I don't know what he can do exactly, but but that's really not good. All right. Sorry, Brett. Go ahead.
He was a character. I mean,
right.
I'm not saying I didn't have fun interacting with him. He was totally open to being in the film and talking about the characters that I wanted him to talk about. And he had that voice, right? I mean, I'm sad that I didn't have him talking, because he talked to me about some of them, and I thought it would be great for people to hear this, such an authoritative voice, and I mean, a really intelligent guy. But I just, as I say, if I think about cruelty, the top 5 instances of cruelty I've heard, he occupies 3 of the spots with complete strangers. So it's hard for me to kind of put that aside when I sort of think about the guy. And I'm not saying that was him for his entire life, but it was, 3 out of the 5 times I interacted with him, that's what I came away with. So it's weird to see, he was such a sweet human being and all that kind of stuff. He wasn't. He was pretty nasty.
All right, Bryn, before we let you go, tell us again about the movie Split Decision, and when do you think we'll have a finalized version of the film?
Well, I'm in Los Angeles editing it right now. I'm up to about 45 minutes of the film, and I'm giving a talk up at Bard University in upstate New York, along with S.L. Price, Carlos Ayer, and a couple of other people just joining a panel to discuss sort of Cuba today and tomorrow. And that's the first place I'm going to show some clips of the film, some of the interviews with Teofilo Stevenson, Felix Sabon, Hector Venant, these great Cuban Olympic champions. And so as I say, about 45 minutes are done now. I'm going to try and get the first cut done in June and see if I can sell it a few places and then sort of clean it up for maybe a fall release. But 45 minutes are in the can right now, and it's looking pretty good.
All right, good stuff. Again, we here at Israel Sports Radio can't wait to see it. The film is Split Decision, the story of Guillermo Redondo, who'll be fighting on the undercard of Manny Pacquiao in this summer. Bryn, we certainly thank you for the time and all the stories of Burt Sugar and the analysis of Lennox Lewis and Manny Pacquiao. And we'll definitely have you on again real soon.
Thanks so much, Ari. Always a pleasure.
All right, man, Bryn. Be well.
Thank you.
All right, that was Bryn Jonathan Butler, the director of Split Decision, the story of Guillermo Redondo. And what we're going to do now to close the show, we're going to play a clip. This is Remembering Burt Sugar, iconic boxing writer. And we're going to play this clip and then end the show. So we want to thank our guest, of course, who were on the program tonight, Joe Robbins, our American correspondent, and the director of Split Decision, Bryn Jonathan Butler. And that's it for tonight. God bless and good night.
What will be the legacy of Burt Sugar, especially for those who maybe weren't as familiar with his writing or followed boxing that closely? I know he was a huge figure in that sport.
It was huge. He and a man by the name of Hank Kaplan, who died a few years ago, had the deepest and broadest knowledge of the history of boxing. So it's as though we're left without our historian now. These 2 men really had the history of boxing down in a way that very, very few people have. So he'll be missed for that reason and many, many others. But he wrote 80 books, started Boxing Illustrated, the magazine, was the editor of Ring magazine for a time, incredibly prolific, quite a Damien Runyon figure, just amazing guy.
And I understand you just spoke to him only weeks ago.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago, and I spoke to him for an hour about boxing, and we chatted quite frequently, and he was sounding like he was getting stronger, so I was really surprised that he died and really, really saddened. And he was a good friend with my mentor, Angelo Dundee. They did the book, My View from the Corner together, and Burt just did an amazing job of getting Angelo's diction down, which was quite unusual. So he's a wonderful person. We'll miss him terribly.
Just very quickly, is that era of that sort of larger-than-life sports writer and sports chronicler gone forever now?
That's what people feel with Burt. It's a really good observation. It's true. That's what it feels like. He was a real character, an ideal type almost. And so yes, that's what we're feeling.